Hi, I'm Rigger, and today we're gonna go over something quick after Volume 9's latest little drop of insanity. Let's talk about Alyx. After the latest episode, I saw a lot of discourse online about what may have happened to her, and people fall into usually two camps on the issue. Either A, Alyx is still here in the Ever After. Possibly she's one of the creatures running around, one of the beings, or they'll come across her, something along those lines, because she was trapped and being punished. The cat does refer to her having learned her lesson in a somewhat sinister way, and we all know that being here can make you something else. That's been pretty clear, and the cat even says that could have happened to Team RWBY. Initially, we were sort of unclear if it applies to humans because the cat did warn the prince that if Team RWBY were beheaded, they might not come back. However, we see Jean, who seems to have chosen another path, and that option seems to be opening up to RWBY, and if you ask my humble opinion, I actually think that was only applying to the prince because I don't think beheading the guards actually kills them. I don't think that counts as death where they would go through the whole recycling process of Ever After. I think it's just an annoying inconvenience, and because they're toilet creatures, they can be put back together. That's just my guess. And even if that's not the case, we also can't rule out that the cat was just lying to the prince to get his way. But either way, let's not get hung up on the details. The point is, in a way that seems to be quite true, the cat says to Team RWBY that he is glad that they are still them, because it's not always the case here. And he has no reason to be lying to them at that point. It seems like a pretty normal statement. So, let's move forward. The other camp of people thinking about what might have happened to Alyx is B, she must have gone back, because how did the story get back? And I've heard a few different wild theories about that. But then, if she did, why did she leave out the things like the Ascension and the various other details? They keep saying that Alyx didn't mention this, or that wasn't in the story, and there's all these new things they don't know about. People have also various theories about that. Of course, things like the gods passed the story back, or that perhaps it was someone else who went back, or that the tale was passed because Oz knows about things, and it's all a bit messy, and I think I have an easier answer. Because here's the deal, I'm pretty sure that you're kind of both wrong and kind of both right. There's a more simple explanation that's kind of staring us in the face, it's right there if you just put the things together, that I haven't seen mentioned. There is also one other note that there is a boy mentioned in passing. There was a reference to a boy who also fell with Alyx in the books, and this happened to him too, in some way. And again, there's not much detail on it, he's mostly left out, and there is the same discourse. He's still stuck here and he's one of these creatures, or he got out, or whatever. I have a thing to talk about with that too, but we'll circle back to it. For now, Alyx, the girl who fell through the world, and by who her own accounts and those who have read the story that we hear from, wasn't the nicest person in the books. She lied and she stole and she did what she had to do to get by, so, survive. You can't necessarily judge someone for that, but she wasn't the great hero sort of thing. She wasn't flawless. She was an average girl stuck in a crazy world of fairy tales just trying to do what she had to do to get out. Fair enough. But only when thinking this over did something hit me. Can you remember when we were introduced to this story? All the way back in Volume 8, when Oscar was locked up. What did Oz and Oscar say?
She brushed off her bumps and bruises, for nothing hurt worse than the loneliness in her chest. I never understood why she was so sad when she finally made it back home.
She wasn't the same girl anymore.
Well, that's fair. An experience like that would change a person. Wait, no. It's literal. She wasn't the same girl anymore. Like, actually. And in fact, that explains everything. Let's jump to now. Remember what the cat said about Herb. That he may come back the same or different, with the same purpose or a different purpose. It's hard to say. He'll come back as whatever the Ever After deems him to be, whatever he feels is right, and fulfill that purpose. And we've seen that perhaps people like Jean or RWBY can be changed, and they can set aside their burdens and their purpose, and maybe pick a new one. But no, what if you also actually could be remade, just like Herb is being? We see his wing. Remade by the Smith. Because, hear me out. Remember we hear about the Red King, who failed and couldn't deal with it when Alyx beat him, and after going through the process, he came back as the Prince, who is similar, but different. They're definitely not the same, and more than his age was changed, he became meaner and cheated, etc., because that's what he has to do to make sure he wins, which is his purpose. But also, those changes fit that ideal. He changed to be younger and more aggressive and a cheater because those are more the qualities you might associate with a sort of bratty young kid rather than a wise king. So he changed to fit the mold of his new role, his new job. But by that same fact, he also came back as a puppet man. He didn't come back as an elephant or a rocking horse or something else. He came back to fulfill the same role, and he was basically the same creature, just altered. Perhaps he could have become something completely different, but that wasn't what he was needed for. So in this case, he came back as something almost the same, but with the qualities changed and his priorities changed. Same thing for Herb. We see Herb's wing at the blacksmith, so maybe he'll come back looking exactly the same, or maybe he'll be a butterfly now, and maybe it doesn't matter about the physical, he also could be changed internally, what his new goals are, and he'll be adjusted as such. But my point is, why are we ignoring this happening to Alyx? Why are we just taking for granted that Alyx is doing the trip the same way we expect Team RWBY to, where they push through and succeed? Because I put forward that perhaps Alyx didn't just pick a new path, she didn't just pick a different weapon or something, or she didn't not pick anything and just push through, that she in fact did this. She went into the Ever After and was remade anew, but not as a crazy creature. She might even look exactly the same or very close, but she was now able to fulfill her goal of escaping. Literally,
She wasn't the same girl anymore.
she had been remade to better fulfill her purpose, and then looked very similar, same species, just like the king, but maybe slight alterations that helped her. And now she was meaner and more willing to break rules and do what she had to do to survive and win, because that's what was necessary to complete her goal. She can still look like an innocent young girl, because that helps with the scheme. If you're not so innocent, but you look that way, you can get by a little further. So on that run through the story, she succeeded. And what matters more is this perfectly explains why everything was left out of the book. Why she didn't mention ascending and several other things. Not because she left them out, or not because they were lost to time. Because she doesn't know they happened, because she forgot. Because when you go through the rebirth process, you forget everything. You lose your memory of what has happened previous. She failed to escape Ever After. She failed to be the hero of the story, or more accurately, the protagonist. She failed to succeed. So, she was taken into Ever After, or she went willingly and was remade again. Similar, but with the qualities she would need to escape and achieve her goal. But after this, then she doesn't remember the things she went through before. And this could have even happened multiple times. Whereupon, she would awake on the beach and try again, playing her role in the story until she got it right. Why can't these footprints in the beginning not be Jean's, or not be someone else, but metaphorically be her own from last time she tried, and she's waken up again and is running through it again? Why couldn't it be from her first attempt? Forgetting who she was before and what she knew before, meaning the story she told in the book is entirely true from her perspective, because this time through, she didn't see anyone ascend, she didn't see any of that. She just saw the story she told. She remembers her last run through where she was successful and everything went the way it was supposed to, or the way that meant she succeeded and left. The only memories she would have was from that run through. Then, at the end, she escapes, and then what happens?
For nothing hurt worse than the loneliness in her chest.
She wasn't the same girl anymore.
Maybe, as the cat says, the heart remembers. She knows there's something missing, or simply, not even that. She just returned home at the end of her journey and was spat out into a world she didn't know. She didn't know any of this anymore. Her family might have been there, her friends talked to her, and she was not the same person that they knew. She was changed, her memories had been changed, and she was upset because she had lost a life that she will now never get back. She will never be that person molded by those experiences. She can't be. All she has is what is remaining. And that's not who everyone else knew when she left. So, with nothing else, she took her story and she wrote it down, and it accounts everything. Maybe even the beginning that she doesn't remember, she sort of fills in the blanks and just makes it up. Or, maybe she does have some memories from beforehand, or her heart just knows a little bit. Whatever you want to be to get over that little intro hurdle, but that can be done with anything, that can be fiction. But her non-heroic tendencies being in the book sort of makes sense, because she's not trying to be the hero, she's writing her life's tale, and that's what she had to do. The fact she seems to have forgotten all the details when she was there make perfect sense, because she should have known the things if she went through the system, except that the system of rebirth removes that knowledge, and if she didn't see it the second time, then makes sense. And what did the cat say?
Yeah, but she learned her lesson in the end, right? I'd certainly say so.
Because it's cruel. It's a cruel lesson, how cruel he is. He's saying she learned by punishment.
For nothing hurt worse than the loneliness in her chest.
By finally escaping and achieving her goal she knows is what she wants, because that's what she was literally built for, and upon escaping, realizing that she has nothing. That the person that she was is gone forever, and she'll never get it back, and now has no purpose and nothing to live for, because she achieved it and is spat back into a world she doesn't belong in anymore. And that isn't even accounting for the fact that perhaps even that the cat did his horrible, heart-changing thing.
For nothing hurt worse than the loneliness in her chest.
That he seems to have done multiple times to make people do what he wants, and he could have even changed her heart to send her into the ever after for that change to happen.
Yeah, but she learned her lesson in the end, right?
I'd certainly say so.
Because if he did that, she would never know. He would have done what he does, got her into the ever after, she would have gone through her change, and then emerged never knowing he did that, and he would have just met her as, hey, I'm the cat, the second time through. What a dick. And here, I have a little bonus idea for you. I'm not saying this definitely happened, but check this out. You know how the cat sometimes says things literally and figuratively in the same run of sentences? They'll sort of change what he means from word to word or line to line. You sort of have to interpret what he means, and he could mean two things at once. Well, it had me thinking of this.
You lot certainly know more about the beginnings of Remnant than Alyx did. That girl could barely see past her own nose.
What do you mean?
Oh, you know. Just hilariously concerned with trivial things.
Okay, back it up. The line,
That girl could barely see past her own nose.
yes, that has a meaning, a figure of speech, that she couldn't see more than what was right in front of her, that she was only concerned with herself and what she thought. And we assume he's elaborating here and saying that that's what was the case.
Oh, you know. Just hilariously concerned with trivial things.
However, what if it was also literal?
That girl could barely see past her own nose.
What if, and I'm serious now, the cat was making a cruel joke that she couldn't see past the end of her nose? Alyx, with a silhouette behind her, in glasses. That the first time she fell in, she couldn't see past the end of her nose because she had terrible eyesight. That the original Alyx perhaps even leaned more into the stereotypes you'd assume with those sort of character designs, like meek and bookish, that kind of person, probably unfit to win this horrible game down here in the fairy tale. So, upon failing, was remade into this Alyx, almost the same, but different, with the qualities she needs to achieve her goal, like being more crafty, being more willing to break rules and deceive, and including fixing her vision, making her, better for combat and things like that she might need, because perhaps her glasses got in the way the first time, some issue. And before you say that's a stretch, remember, this is a mirror. This is a mirror we're looking at. And look how the two figures are placed, back to back. If you were standing with your back to a mirror, you would see the back of yourself in it. However, they look different. But remember the significance of mirrors. Not just in RWBY, but especially in the story we're talking about, Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass. A looking glass is a mirror. So this is a reflection of herself, but what if it's not who she became, it's who she used to be? It's her on the other side of the mirror, outside of Wonderland, outside of Ever After. On the inside now, she is this, the side the cat is looking at, the side on the inside of Ever After. So, just like Jean became a shadow of himself in front of time, here, instead, the shadow is her past. The past is who she was, and on the other side of the looking glass, she has now become this reflection of herself. Slightly different, slightly changed, and looking into Wonderland.
She wasn't the same girl anymore.
That seems pretty consistent, and keeping up with our new information. You can even extend this metaphor further. Do you remember in the openings how the Team RWBY are following the silhouette of a missing Alyx? Because, again, that Alyx is now gone from the story. That's who she was here. And you have this thing of RWBY possibly going down her path, and maybe that is actually the danger. We don't want RWBY to change. Maybe this isn't a positive thing for her. She might need to learn to deal with her emotions, but picking a change could be a horrible thing because it would set her on the path of doing what she's been doing so far, becoming the next Alyx, which would mean she's a different person by the time she goes back, and it could be very, very bad for her. Losing all her memories, becoming a totally different person who perhaps feels they're more capable of doing what they have to do, not just escaping, but perhaps beating Salem or whatever. A meaner, more cunning, better warrior person, but not RWBY, and not actually the answer. It's a punishment, it's not a good thing. It would be the same path Alyx took. Now, sort of cut that off there, consider that its own theory on its own. but I have a bit to tack onto the end to explain how it all happened. So you can consider this an additional theory or a continuation, but either way, sort of draw a line there, and now you have to jump over to a new topic, which is the boy. I have this big suspicion here. I think that the boy, mentioned briefly and not elaborated on, and no one talks about, is Oz. Now, we don't see him represented here anywhere in the opening, except for maybe those falling from the sky, and there's no paintings or pictures or anything, and in fact, Alyx may have basically forgotten him, which is why he's barely mentioned, is what I'm thinking. Or perhaps, the heart knows, that kind of thing. Or she has faint memories, but I'll sort of elaborate what I mean. Usually, I don't like the idea of people bringing up Oz so much. I don't like him being the key to everything all the time. I kind of get mad at it as a simple go-to answer. I don't like the idea that he made the Ever After or something, or that he made these great things, or that he's definitely involved in every little thing. Especially when we're dealing with things of godly proportions. He was a powerful mage, and he had access to relics from time to time, but that doesn't mean he was his own level of god. I mean, he was brilliant, and we saw him and Salem being godlike figures to people who didn't know any better, but there's a bit of a difference there between that and people who just, created all of life and the entire system that everything works on. So, anyway, we're getting sidetracked. Oz. In this particular case, looking back on things, I do think that the boy was Oz. Because, well, Oscar kind of mentions this.
I shouldn't be surprised you're so familiar with fairy tales.
I've lived through my share of them.
He lived through them. Yeah, I know Go on the Tower and others, but he lived through it. He lived through this, didn't he? A mysterious young boy. So, a previous Oscar. And it would actually make sense with the biggest issue I've had about all of this, with all the gold who fell through the world and all of that. All these people saying, maybe Pier is down here, or whatever. As we learn more, it seems less and less likely that anyone can get here. Think about what they had to go through to get here, how specific the thing they had to ask for and situation they had to end up in to get here. How did Alyx get here? How did the boy get here? How is that possible? Except it does work if it's Oz. Not because he's so great and powerful, but because he knows where the relics are, and that is a way you could get here, and I think I kind of know why. So let's say Alyx was with Oz. Not like a pair or a ship or anything like that, they were kids. I mean that they were like siblings in this reincarnation, maybe, or friends. But siblings works probably better for why they'll be close together while young, especially in whatever unknown time period. Because this has been around long enough to be a pretty well-known tale. Anyway, Oz has all of his knowledge when he reincarnates. When he was put into Oscar, he, as Oz, remembered everything he'd ever done. He didn't have to grow into it or something. He had to grow into the body, but his mind was always there. So, the same would apply here, that Oz, once being placed in this body, would have all of his knowledge, even if it was when this was a baby even. We don't know. Although that's pretty weird to think about. Think about Oz being reincarnated into a baby and having to have all his knowledge as multiple adults through thousands of years and have to grow up all the way from being a baby and being mothered and cared for and useless. That would be... Anyway, either way, whatever you decide on, let's say that he either had already completely taken over this body or this boy was more cooperative than Oscar was. Doesn't really matter, take your pick. In that case, Oz is acting with all of his knowledge. Meaning, Oz knew where the relics probably were because he probably put them there himself. And let's say at this point, he wasn't completely defeated yet. He hadn't totally given up, or he had a new idea he wanted to try. So, in the body of this boy, he ended up going to get the relics, and that's why he ended up here. The relics are the only real way we know, or to possibly open a portal to get here to the Ever After. And I think it actually makes sense. It could even be why Oz was careful later to mention about wording your statement to Ambrosius precisely, because this mistake had happened. What if, say, Oz was looking for an answer to Salem, and he asked for something, a mirror, because you look into a mirror, that would let him know what the gods are doing?
Where am I?
We are between realms.
He just wanted a way to know what the gods were doing. Or a mirror that would let him speak to the gods, or know where they are, etc. Some wording like that. It wasn't specifically just see them, or maybe it was see them, but he didn't define only from afar. Although that wouldn't even help him. It would be a way, let me find a way to see the gods. So Ambrosius conjures up this mirror, this looking glass. And to Oz, this all makes sense. I asked to see the gods, and I was given this mirror. Let's see what they're doing. Except Ambrosius had taken his line literally that he wanted to see the gods, go and see them, and upon using the mirror, he was sucked into it as a portal to get to here because this is where the gods went next, or this is where they were at the time, whatever it may be. It could have even been, where did the gods go next, and he ended up getting here. This is a direct reference to Alice Through the Looking Glass, and it would be something Ambrosius we know is capable of, and consistent with how the others got here. And it would be how Oz learned his lesson about messing with the staff like this.
We can't just wave it like a magic wand and make our problems go away.
Perhaps even why he put it an Atlas, that he decided to give it a job it couldn't stop doing. That way, no one would make the same stupid mistake he did. It actually makes sense why it's up in Atlas. No one in their right mind would drop Atlas on Mantle, so the staff's just going to stay there doing its thing, and now no one can use it. He's locked it up. Not just in the vaults, but doing this task. That means you just have to fill in the blanks. He accidentally was sucked in, and say his sister in this life saw him and followed trying to save him. Or the other way around. He made it, and then she accidentally went through, and he felt compelled to go and save her. Either way. Attention please, little drop-in audio here. I realize I forgot to mention this. I should also mention that there is a chance that in fact this is not his sister or a friend, that in fact at this time Alyx was the maiden that Oz needed to get to where the Staff of Creation was being held. Initially I didn't think it would have been that way because it felt like the vaults came much later, but we don't know when in the timeline this took place. So there's a chance that Alyx was just by chance the maiden he needed and Oz found her. But by that same note, it doesn't mean she was very well trained with her powers or knew how to use them at all even. And there's a chance she doesn't follow him because of a sense of caring or family, but because it's her duty, or it's an accident, or she just doesn't know what else to do. It is another explanation of why she would have been present right with Oz as he was doing this with the staff, if he had just taken it out of the vault, because she would have had to have been right there. Somehow I missed this very important part of my script. Anyway, back to the video. And that means what happens next is far more consistent with especially Oz's behaviour, where you'd expect that a kid going on this journey would write everything they'd ever seen, but Oz has already had dealings with gods at this point. Oz has lived many lives at this point. The Ozman we've seen would certainly be one to keep the secret, to not fill in the blanks for other people, not leave them instructions, and we've seen that his approach to the world in general is that it's better for people to not know about Salem, the relics, etc. That's been his approach. So, he would just let Alyx be. Maybe even leave home, like Oz would go off and do his own thing, and leave Alyx lost. Not able to fill in the gaps herself, not able to explain things to her parents or anyone else. Oz would in fact be happy with this outcome because she'd forgotten how she got there, she'd forgotten the relics and all those other details, so there you go. But there's also tons of variations on that, like they fell at different times and went through at different times, and they never caught back up again. You know, you could say that if you want. But as far as this realm goes, I know it's tempting to say that no, in fact Ambrosius made this place. He used the power of the staff to create a place that Oz needed because he had to hide the relics, especially like the one at Beacon or whatever. He grabbed a fairy tale book and asked Ambrosius to make a place like this and held up a fairy tale book. So Ambrosius used the storybook as a blueprint and bam, made this pocket dimension where everything runs on fairy tale rules. Except that falls apart, right? Ambrosius can only do one thing at a time, and that doesn't seem to be a lie. He didn't make the vaults, he didn't make this whole land, and it doesn't seem like he's lying because when we had to do stuff with Penny, exactly what he said would happen would happen. Unless he's imposing that rule on himself, but he doesn't bend his will to Oz, none of the spirits do. They are beings of the gods, so they follow their rules. Instead, it makes much more sense that Oz did basically just what Team RWBY did, both accidentally winding up in the gods' next little project. Oz made this way to access it, a window in, I'm assuming, a mirror, and Oz got more than he bargained for, escaped, at the cost of who Alyx was, and afterwards he swore off using the staff, used it to create, say, Atlas, so the mirror disappeared, so that portal's gone, and just left it be. Presumably, his plan would have been to go and meet the gods and talk to them and see if they can help him with Salem or try and explain to them or get some extra help, but it didn't work out. Whether that be the gods weren't even here, or he couldn't find them, or whatever, or they said no, if that was the case, and he called the whole thing a failure, so went back to Remnant and used the staff to make something else so the portal vanished, so that's gone. and eventually wound up putting it in Atlas, whether that be straight away or later, so that it can't be used again. This also makes sense with, say, Jean falling way in the past, or any of that. Even if you take all that out, if you take all the people who fell off a platform maybe fell way in the past too, and that's why the cat has met multiple people. No. Let's go to the cat saying he's talked to multiple people. He said, like, they know more than others he's met. Plural. Because, I mean, presumably you could talk to Jean, but Jean didn't seem to tell him all these things. So even if the cat never spoke to Jean, never spoke to anyone else who fell off the platform, if that's your theory, he still could have talked to multiple people by talking to both Alyx and that version of Oz. However, Oz wouldn't have been so open with him. Probably wouldn't have been interesting to him, because Oz was more cunning. Oz certainly would be far less trustworthy, especially with magic beings, to the point where the cat may have even found him boring and left him be and went to go join Alyx. And in fact, there's a version of this that makes the most sense to me, actually. Let's say everything I said was true, and they came down here together through the portal that Oz accidentally made, and they land here, and the story starts. Why would we assume that Oz's soul functions like how Team RWBY's and everyone else's does when he's here? Sure, Wonderland is magical and it can affect the girls and all these normal people, but Oz is not a normal person by far. We have no reason to think that all the rules that apply to Oz stop working just because he's here. There's a chance that Wonderland rules don't have much of an effect on him, like even the cat might not be able to affect him, or maybe it can. But the other thing that is big and overwhelming for Oz as far as rules go is the dictation of what happens when he dies.
Until your task is complete, you will reincarnate.
It is dictated by the gods, not by Remnant, by the gods who make everything, that he will reincarnate and go on Remnant. So there's a very good chance he could have died here, and in fact died even to the Jabberwocker, which is said to destroy you, there's no coming back from that, and simply just then been reincarnated back up on Remnant. And that's what I would actually think happened. He can't be destroyed, he must continue, the gods say so. So, when he's eaten by this being of destruction, or whatever you want to call it, he just reincarnates to the next body and leaves. In fact, check it out. Everything happens as I said. Oz makes the portal in, and he goes through, because he doesn't really know what he's doing, he touches it or whatever, and gets sucked through, and his sister, being in the house or whatever, sees him. So, out of protective instinct for her sibling or her friend, whatever, she also goes straight into the mirror to go save him. However, upon landing, she's not much good in a fight, she can't do very much, and Oz, despite being pretty good in a fight, is in a kid's body and doesn't have good weapons or anything at his disposal. So, something goes wrong, and Oz loses to the Jabberwocker and is eaten. However, he isn't destroyed, this body is, but his soul just gets ejected back up to Remnant and on the way to his next reincarnation. This leaves behind Alyx in the Ever After. Now, she just saw her brother be horribly eaten by a monster and die, and she's about ready to give up. She has nothing left. So, having nothing left, she willfully submits to the Ever After because she wasn't good enough. She couldn't save him. She has no purpose, nothing left. And then Ever After does its thing and fulfills what her purpose is supposed to be. That she wants to escape here and save people, whatever. She wants to be the warrior that she wasn't. So it fixes her eyes, and it keeps her looking nice and innocent because that's good for the mission where she has to trick people, but it makes her more devious and more set in her ways to do anything she has to do to escape, because that was the goal she had in mind that she failed. In fact, she probably got on the bad side of the Curious Cat, because she complained about her brother dying, how it isn't fair, change it, turn it back, doing the whole Salem thing. But, talking to the magical beings here that seem to have some kind of power.
Oh, just hilariously concerned with trivial things.
And maybe he sent her to Ever After to get changed if you want it so much, that kind of thing. Or maybe not. Either way, she got on the bad side of the cat, and that will lead to his grudge. But either way, bam, she wakes up on the beach, not really knowing who she is or why she's there, except she knows her name because all the residents seem to know their name, and she knows her purpose, to leave. She's got to fulfill her goal. She's now someone willing to do whatever it takes to escape and leave Ever After. And she does so. She goes through, she doesn't see any of the things that are left out of the book, she doesn't see anyone to send, she just goes through, runs through the story, she runs across the cat who pretends he's never seen her before, or, more in fitting with him, treats her as if he's never met her before because he hasn't. This is a new her. And she goes through the story and she succeeds and she pops back to Remnant with no memories of anything, a changed person, and horribly torn up by that realization.
For nothing hurt worse than the loneliness in her chest.
She wasn't the same girl anymore.
And with nothing else, she writes her book, which becomes Fairy Tale. And we have no idea when Oz reincarnates. We've seen before that it can be pretty variable because Salem was surprised he reincarnated so soon. So perhaps even way later down the line, Oz reincarnates into his next being and discovers that there's this tale that Alyx wrote that, oh, she must have eventually got out, and he never even got to talk to her again or anything, and she never got to know that he got to carry on. It was just a tragedy of his past left behind. But a good warning as to not to fall into that trap of using the staff that way again. But also, there's no reason to adjust the tale or try and change it. It's written, people know it, it's accepted, and all the details left out are probably for the best. So Oz just lets it be. And that is every base covered. And that is the end of this. It explains it all in a way I'm very happy with. But what about you? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, my name is Rhaegar. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope I did alright.